2024 Year of the Dragon. What do we need to know about this compelling year ahead? Hi everyone and welcome back. This is Sky coming on to talk to you about the Chinese Lunar New Year coming on February 10th, 2024. We are transitioning from the rabbit archetype to the dragon archetype, which will be lasting from February 10th, 2024 until January 29th, 2025. Not quite a full year. We have a lot to talk about with this really exciting topic. Be sure to hit the subscribe button below and turn on the bell notifications to get future updates and other awesome content like this. Hit that like button if you are excited for the year ahead of the Wood Dragon. Okay everyone, so in this video I plan to do some intuitive channeling of the Dragon Year archetype, seeking some information and psychic insight about the way that we can best use this annual energy. And then I'm also going to talk about some of the timelines that I'm feeling that will bring about certain chapters in this year ahead. So let's get straight into it. Okay, so there is a lot of distinction and more separation and division coming between people and their energetic statuses. What I really mean by this is we have a very clear demarcation with this 2024 Dragon Year archetype of so many different people feeling different ways. It's harder to group together. It's harder to really hang on to certain also long-running ideologies or momentums. There's a lot of shifting happening in this year of political ideology or even life philosophy, religion. There's a feeling of the previous ideas or conceptions perhaps being misrepresented or misconstrued, and it causes us to start asking questions. Existential crises are at a high with a Dragon Year archetype, as well as shadow work, questioning who we are, identity crisis. All of these kinds of sort of internal questions can really climax in this year cycle, and it was the same with the 2023 Rabbit Year cycle. There was a lot of time during the previous year cycle to go within, to stay at home a lot, to focus, rest, rejuvenate. But for a lot of people, perhaps that feeling of being pulled within or withdrawn was not as relaxing as they expected it to be. So one of the main energetic themes I'm feeling for the 2024 year cycle is kind of we'll get the hard stuff out of the way, being at wit's end with how exactly you get to your best energetic output, meaning how you have good health, how you have good finances, how you have good relationships in your life, how you also have a feeling of control or lack of control, a feeling of free time or not much free time, and how all of this, perhaps surprisingly, doesn't necessarily get us what we expect. So we might take a bunch of time off, for example, in the 2023 year cycle, and kind of come back to a central point and enjoy that, but perhaps it doesn't really relax or rejuvenate us in the way that we expected. 2024 Dragon Year is going to start to get this right. Okay, so it's a very good year for rebalancing your rest and output cycle. So how frequently you're spending energy versus how frequently you're recharging. There is a very clear recharge and output cycle, boom and bust cycle. There's a very demarcated yes or no during this year. This is a very difficult year for being kind of ambiguous or ambivalent, or also expecting people to understand the unexpressed aspects of you. Okay, so expression is very important in the Dragon 2024 year. If there's something that we want, if there's a space that we want to hold, we need to express that, or we need to fast track our path to the possibility of expressing that. Perhaps there are some very lucky people who can find the exact right people without necessarily expressing their interest, but that's going to be very rare. And there's a challenge in the Dragon Year to express the next level of your game, or to basically start to find new heights. Traditionally, the dragon archetype in the Chinese system deals with favor. Okay, this is probably considered the luckiest of the 12 Chinese signs. Perhaps lucky is not even the right word. Perhaps I would call it more the most potent or the most capacity enriched of the signs. A lot of times we see that this is a type of year cycle where people would do that power play, or where people would go out on a limb or try to assert in a new type of way. And as I feel it, perhaps with some of the other planets that we have right now, Saturn and Neptune and Pisces, I'm feeling a bit contradicted with that, and I'm feeling like it's very difficult to do that here, but it is nonetheless the archetype. So there's, I think, a midpoint with it where a lot of people are like, I'm going to start nudging myself towards a new expression, or I'm ready to show who I am. There's a very high likelihood of gaining new power during the 2024 year cycle of some kind. So perhaps through a promotion, perhaps through inheritance, perhaps through just the passage of time. You have more authority over something. As a dragon deals with the archetype of authority, there is a contact like the Emperor card in the tarot, the Magician card. Also, I would say like the star and the moon as well. There's a very kind of like magic feeling with dragon. And that's something that I'm getting intuitively about this year is some things coming up in your life may not be able to be totally understood, or may not perhaps have a complete, total like scientific nature about it. This is a very good year for further developing faith, for further developing your own energetic capacity as a person. In the positive, this year is wonderful for combining your health with your purpose. Okay, so no longer feeling like they're at odds with each other. So like I have to go against my health or against my well-being in order to pursue my purpose, or I have to turn off my purpose or lose track of my ultimate cause path in order to be healthy. In the positive, I see that some people are able to do way more than most years during this year. So getting 3 years of progress done in one, also having things just coalesce or manifest in your life due to very long cycles of momentum generating that almost can't be explained. It gets a kind of magic realist kind of vibe about it. Now in the negative, I also see the dragon year as potentially bringing about a lot of very egotistical energy use. So like, negative forms of magic, negative forms of ritual or energy use that is not accomplishing something that's based in love. And it's great during this year to really keep our protection in good order and have good health, good vitality, and good sort of like resilience and nourishment. Because also dragon year, because it is about asserting power, it's about power plays, it's about in some cases like conquest or taking something. It's a very forceful energy. I would say the most forceful energy of the Chinese New Year. Maybe that sounds glamorous to those of us attempting to make some kind of progress, but it can also be like somebody trying to take something that's yours, or somebody trying to claim something that perhaps you also have your eyes on. Like you can imagine like different politicians trying to like vie for the same position, or you can imagine also different businesses or different groups of people attempting to harness like one resource. There's a feeling of competition. And especially in Dragon Year, it's not just competition, it's almost like doing whatever it takes to claim something or to get the upper hand, or in some cases just to prove something to oneself. Now, this can be used in a very positive way at an individual level, especially like proving your own capacity to yourself. But this is one of those very like powerful, chaotic, neutral vibes that can also be very negative, like injuring yourself to reach a certain goal, or, having to go through some type of cycle with corruption in order to forcibly attain something, having to really squirm or even kind of forget the future in order to bring about something very quickly and immediately. So definitely in Shadow, we're looking at themes of desperation. We're looking at that feeling that there's not enough time to do things the right way, so things have to be done in a very whatever it takes kind of way. And then there's going to be like another group of people who are working with this energy, I suppose, in a more mature or more, I almost want to say like holy way, or a more, that has so many different meanings to different people, just a more high frequency way. And there's a combining, I feel, of this dragon energy with like the Saturn and Neptune in Pisces. that will kind of bring about a stillness or a precipice of sorts with which you can almost like rejuvenate your energy and really learn vicariously through other people about, gravity, basically cause and effect. So I was talking a lot about this in the 2024 year ahead forecast, which I'll link below, especially in like the Scorpio portion, but this also came up in the intuitive messages. It's almost like being separate from certain conflicts, but nonetheless being put into like an observer standpoint. I think that a lot of people are there, especially if you like watch media a lot or you see things about like war or whatever difficult global circumstance like on the news. There's a lot of this feeling of like being like disconnected from it, but witnessing it or seeing it. And there's something about that can help to empower us to make better, more sustainable lives for ourselves through like learning or through also understanding that like there's something innately broken or something innately fragmented about the sort of like status quo regime or matrix that we're in right now. So a lot of people get into this like very kind of like questioning energy also during the dragon year, which leads them to maybe impose or have a very kind of like rigid idea of like what I have to have now. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a matter of revealing all the cards, at your chest, as a lot of people will do that in 2024. So like, it's going to be hard for people not to do it. Like, it's going to feel very popular for people to put everything out on the line, like revealing all the cards, using every power play, spending every penny. That will be the macro this year, you all. So if we're thinking strategically, perhaps the best thing you can do this year is reserve or kind of hold things close to your chest as everybody else kind of reveals or everybody else kind of goes out on limbs to try to force something or to try to validate their own ego or in some cases survive. Yeah, in some cases people are doing this to survive, and that's a little bit different. But I feel that everybody, no matter what, has opportunities in this year to put it all out on the line. Like, I'm going to go full force into that next career, or I'm going to get as much borrowing power as I can through mortgages or loans or something for my business or my house so that I can finally show myself how much capacity I really have. You see, this is very sacred when it comes to survival, but it's very almost tawdry when it comes to a tangential or misdirected power play. And it's going to be like very tempting for most of us to experience that in some way, but I definitely recommend, unless a situation comes into your life where you have to like really access your survival instinct or you have to really use your energy in a very dramatic way, I would recommend holding back, because another part of the dragon year is about rest. Okay, and I was getting this in over the last few months, like actually this 3-year cycle, 2023, 2024, and 2025, all have animal totems that represent being underground in some way. So rabbit, dragon, and snake. Part of the mythos and story of all of these animals deals with underground spaces, beneath the surface, non-superficial aspects. So if you can imagine being in a larger sort of medium-term chapter that kind of deals with the unrevealed or deals with of what happens under the ground, like the seed that is planted, yet trying or feeling the need to reveal all the cards or have all the blooms or all of the leaves on the tree. You see, it's too much, it's too demanding, and this is something that you would already be feeling by February of 2024, like I'm totally exhausted. I have nothing to give because I'm trying to plant and I'm trying to harvest and I'm trying to spend and I'm trying to yield and I'm trying to be 1,000 different people. I'm trying to be a member of different religions. I'm trying to like access all kinds of different energy lines, basically being too spread thin, as these are all potentials, especially for the younger generations, but yes, also for the older generations, for everyone. Basically this like attempting to have an everything type of experience. Like I want that feeling of knowing that I've planted something that hasn't come above the ground yet, but I also want to harvest the fruit, and I also want to eat the fruit, and I also want to plant the seeds. And this is very exhausting. So you see, the last year that we had that was 2022. The Tiger year cycle was actually about, it's like the once in a 12-year cycle, you get this like chance to be like almost, I don't know how to explain it, like tied or attached or contained by so many different energy lines, so many different stories. And it's kind of like a kaleidoscope of life experience that came up in 2022. And I think that a lot of people try to prolong that, which kind of like demeans the meaning of that very short-lived energy there. And a lot of people tried to pull that forth into 2023, and it can't be pulled forth into 2024. You see, tiger is not an underground animal. It's a very strong, very potent, very fast, simply above ground animal that just, moves through and is very high on the food chain. And then the poetry of it, though, is that rabbit comes after it, and that's very low on the food chain, and that's very docile, and that is very also contained, but more hidden, more able to recharge, more able also to connect with other energies than tiger is. And we're basically getting the next step after that here, which is what I see to be like the containment of rabbit, basically opening up to a higher space, basically growing wings, still having that containment available, but finally being able to lift off from it and sort of fly from that and not be so bound to the contained space. So this means breaking barriers. This means overcoming past limitations. This means perhaps even like rising into new social status or new authority, or just simply not being stuck in like the same area. Okay, there's a lot more mobility and a lot more ability to cover a way larger distance. However, there's still an underground feeling of containment, because if you look at like the lore or the mythos of dragons, they have these bursts of energy, but then they also have these caves or these times where they have to like retreat or be completely hidden. And they're not seen very frequently, are they? So even though it's a grandiose and gregarious and powerful energy, it is not seen very frequently. So it's a very sacred year, as we also then have snake after dragon, right, which is also an underground animal. For many times of the year, it is either like hidden or underground. So we're in a larger cycle where we're able, and this is so supported by like Saturn and Neptune and Pisces, where we're able to not have to be so pushy on the external or in the public square, and actually able to recharge at a deeper, hidden and personalized level. And finally, one of the main things I'm feeling intuitively about Dragon is that while there is a need to do something incredible or to focus or hone our energy very directly, it feels like the execution is very important. So it's not about just splurging out energy. It's really more about a concise, precise, and clear expression of energy. Of course, the dragon breathes fire, right? So there's a power behind this year. There's a feeling of having something to direct energy toward. Of course, the energy of conflict and military, such things as that are very prominent usually during the year of the dragon. And of course, that's very important to wield responsibly. So in your own life, if you have any conflicts going on, or if you have any feelings of like battle or dislocation, it's very important to wield whatever resources you have in a very precise, directed, and careful way. Because again, one of the shadows of dragon is, accidents or misused, misdirected, misconstrued energy, or perhaps, power decisions made on emotion. Okay, anything like that is something that we want to really think of a lot before we go making major decisions in life, before we go, drawing up that social media post, or before we go getting that loan or creating any kind of conflict or issue. It's very important to think about, is this wielding the resources that I have in my life in a precise healing, okay, that's very important, healing, not destructive, but healing way. Am I wielding my resources in a healing or destructive way? Am I overusing, overburdening, stepping into a state of overkill with the way that I am commandeering what I have in my life? This is all a very important thing, especially to be thinking about in the early phase of the year, right as we're stepping into a wood dragon. Again, this is wood dragon, so it's not quite as flashy as some of the other elemental dragon energies. This has to do with infrastructure. This has to do with, again, the very steady, endurance-focused use of what we have in our life rather than the flashy or grandiose or kind of reckless use of what we have. Okay, let's talk timelines for this year ahead. So the first major timeline that I was getting psychically as I was meditating on this video was the timeline of February 2024 through April 2024, the entire month of April, so really February to May 1st. There is an important time of regenerating and accepting the beauty and wholesomeness of your experience. So a lot of us might feel like, okay, dragon year is starting up. I need to do something big. I need to make a big move. I need to really get myself out there or breathe fire in some way in my life. Not in the beginning of it. So the beginning of it, it's like generating a wingspan, or it's still understanding how it works or how it moves or mobilizes. So February to April is a major test of acceptance, surprisingly. And a lot of people don't correlate that with dragon at all, but it's one of the most important times of acceptance, accepting who you truly are, accepting the purposes in your life now, accepting also what has been put in front of you, or perhaps the space that you're inhabiting, or the incredible energy that is now on your plate. And it's not the busiest time. Now, I also take this in the context of us having one of the most major solar eclipses in April, especially if you're on the North American continent. The center point is in the North American continent. So my recommendation for this February to April timeline, it's a very, very important time in all of our lives, focusing on nourishment, focusing on resilience, focusing on perhaps not overdoing yourself so that you have just more bandwidth, more energetic reserves to go off of is important. And hopefully there's something that you were building over 2023 that you can also tap into. So perhaps passive income that you've built for yourself, or perhaps, passive energetic income, if you know what I mean, mindsets or ideas that give us more faith. Okay, developing a stronger faith or prayer cycle can be very beneficial during this time, as we can lean into something that's not so material or physical. I also feel that comparison bias is something that is very focused during February to April, as a lot of us compare what we have or what we're experiencing maybe to what we're seeing on social media or to what other people have in our lives. And that can be very conflict generating. That can make us very dissatisfied. So it's important to know if we are having dissatisfaction, as I think that a lot of people might be, is that coming from an actual disharmony with what we feel, or is this a contrast between maybe what we're seeing on social media or something that is not even that big of a deal? I feel that this window is very make or break for a lot of people. February through April, first chapter of Dragon Year, it's seriously, the way in which some people can set themselves back during this time is pretty intense, especially in regard to burning out. That's possible in February to April. So if you are feeling burned out, or if you've been struggling with burnout before in your life, try to really pay attention to those signs here, just because that's another thing that can happen with dragon is the fire, the inherent fire energy of it, especially with the wood element. It's very flammable, so it can burn out very easily. So it's important to soothe that. Water element is very good this year because wood also harmonizes well with water and creates new growth. It also counteracts burnout. So keep hydrated, keep your, maybe have the water element nearby at all times. I also feel that there's something that does need to settle down, especially if you had a chaotic rabbit year, a chaotic 2023, or a 2023 that was over-gassed or overdone. Something needs to settle during this time. Maybe you need to pull down your living expenses or pull down your budget in some way to have more. Or maybe there are some simple logistical solutions cutting out caffeine from your life. I feel like these are really solid choices, destimulating the experience a little bit, really focusing on circadian rhythms. Of course, I always recommend that, but it's really good during this time because it sort of helps the body to calm down a little bit and maybe be a bit less liable towards burnout or overstimulation or, succumbing to glitches or something like that. Also, I feel like there's an appreciation of time or an appreciation of the spiral of life that is important. So if things aren't perfect, if you don't feel like you've just accomplished everything, if you don't feel like you know exactly what's going on, that can feel very harsh during the dragon year to not have an exact idea of what you're doing or to not be totally on what you feel to be your ultimate cause path, which is then kind of even more working against getting there. So you can kind of appreciate your journey or appreciate the unknown or appreciate the fact that you're not quite exact in certain things. And then maybe that will kind of knock it into place and there will be more possibility to really connect to a greater sense of capacity. But yes, it does just feel very important to me, especially by the time that we hit April, to basically have a lot of resilience in place, to have a lot of stability, and to have a lot of excess time and energy, because there's going to be a lot of unexpected things coming up in April. Okay, so let's talk about the next timeline that I feel for the dragon year. That is the quite long timeline of May through October of 2024. So that's May, June, July, August, September, October. That's 6 months. This is a distance covering time period. This is the meat of dragon year. This is where the real flight happens. If there's anything you've needed to alchemize in your life, so turning one thing into another, getting from point A to point B, getting things proportioned correctly, it's more than that. It's more getting out of something that doesn't resonate with you anymore and alchemizing it into a better direction, moving, okay? Immigrating is very likely during that time. I just see so many people doing the long haul push or the long haul move, long flights, I'm getting a lot of psychic images during that time, but I'm just trying to navigate through and understand how to articulate that. Okay, May through October. Air actions. The air element is very strong. We have Jupiter in Gemini. We have the dragon year. Something is flying through the air. Okay. This could be something related to space as well, or rocket ships, or things like the exploration of space and, anything that you can imagine with the air element coming up there. We want to maybe consider the things that we need to move in our own life. Okay, we're just having a bit of a randomized channeling coming through here. Something is moving, something is covering some kind of distance. So is there anything heavy in your own life that you need to transport or move? So I'm seeing shipping, I'm seeing also moving companies, I'm seeing a lot of mobility, I'm seeing also if you've needed to minimize things, if you've needed to cut down, if you've needed to get old things out of your house, if you're a house of old things, getting them out, donating things. I'm seeing wastelands and landfills. I'm seeing things where stuff goes in finality and a transportation process to these areas. So maybe something relating also to waste management, sustainability, plastic. Okay, it would be interesting to maybe see some new regulations or ideas on how to manage plastic, as maybe there's a landfill crisis, or there's something relating to also too much consumer goods or things that don't last, too much piling up. This is not groundbreaking to talk about, but this could also be somewhat of a symbolic metaphor for a feeling of replaceability. Okay, yeah, there's something coming up in this timeline, May through October, where people are going to start realizing that they're wasting a lot of the things in their life. Their money is going away to die. They're not saving well. They're not spending well. Maybe they're even viewing people in their life as replaceable. Maybe this is the dating culture. Maybe there's a wasteland of dating profiles. Okay, maybe there's a lot of anger and resentment in the collective consciousness about feeling as if other people don't value us. And this is going to align us with a different kind of cause and a different kind of, a totally different type of social ideology relating to the theme of replaceability. So these plastic water bottles, these dating profiles, all of this plastic culture may start to become very unpopular during this time. And I feel that this is happening at the same exact time as there are like major like global changes, perhaps with like borders or certain types of political ideologies. So this is basically like a cultural paradigm shift happening, which usually does happen in a dragon year, by the way. We might not realize it as it's happening, but it's happening during that time. Some distance is being covered as it relates to social ideologies. So this is maybe one of those generational shifts. Of course, we have Pluto on the cusp here as well, so that definitely indicates that as well. Pluto in Aquarius, so we have a new generation being born here. We have a new, also passing of the baton. So there's basically like a succession crisis in some ways happening here. Maybe a lot of vying, maybe a lot of competition, and a lot of testing of old systems, regiments, and budgets, stuff like that, to see if it's like sturdy. And something for some people can be fast-tracked during this time. You can really like build up a huge savings account during this time. You can finish a degree during this time. You can double up on the work shifts and fast-track something. But again, you want to be cautious about burnout. But yeah, a lot of people will see that they have a little bit more margin here, a little bit more zest to get ahead, because a lot of people, yes, are behind. So if there's any distance you need to cover, May through October 2024 should also decrease the feeling of being forlorn, as we might get better oriented with our purpose by, you know, perhaps working harder or having a Y factor for building up in such a profound way, which could then be like reinforced by something that's happening at a global level. So there's a lot of that kind of like universalism, or a lot of like that happened all those countries away from here. And it makes me think about like the way that I live my life, or the choices that I'm making, or the way that I'm like building to something, which can kind of be like a bit of a like spiritual chiropractic adjustment, perceptual level, definitely during that time period, which is going to mean that a lot of these old things we've been clinging to, styles, trends, previous habits, are going to be done. Okay, this is very profound. A lot of the minutia, a lot of the flotsam and jetsam during this May to October window will probably pass, as we see like that's what's really important, or that's the significance in my experience, or that's what I'm aiming for. All this other stuff is weighing me down, kind of like a like rocket entering into the next level of the atmosphere, and a lot of that other, you know, jets and stuff that was pushing it like fall away. Seeing that for a lot of people during that time. But that also means that the previous way of generating energy is not necessary anymore. So there's a need to adapt during that time, and a lot of other planetary alignments that do not indicate adaptation. Okay, we've got this Uranus and Jupiter in Taurus, which is going to make us kind of want to cling. Like, I want to be in my ancestral area. I want to be connected to my heritage. I want to do what everyone has done before me. And then all of a sudden, like come May, Jupiter's going to go into Gemini. We're going to have Saturn in Pisces. We're going to like build up to these Jupiter-Saturn squares with like a dragon year. And it's going to be very like, I just have never done this before. Like, this is not familiar to me, but also it can be a lot lighter for that reason. So it just kind of depends on the makeup and personality of the person. But very good to cover a distance or to make progress because of the lightness of the aura there. Okay, and the final chapter I'm feeling for the 2024 year cycle is November 2024 to January 29th, 2025, which is the final day of the dragon year as we transition into the snake archetype. Okay, so things land again, like maybe into December, but like November through January, basically there's a distance that has been covered, and there's a landing again and a regrouping that starts to happen to prepare us to go into snake archetype, which is going to be, again, more ground level, more underground, and all about transformation, shedding of skin, and discovering who we are now. So I'm not going to go too far into that because that's going to freak a lot of us out to think about, you know, how much 2024 has been about being this and generating this, and then all of it's going to have to kind of be turned over again. later in 2025. So I can give you guys a little bit of a trump card here, a little bit of a advantage. There is a transformative energy about 2024 Dragon Year, but it's minute and it has more to do with how we energize. 2025 Snake Year will be more appropriate for like a true like skin shedding or a true total transformation, as then 2026 will be very much about truly being and embodying a major version of ourselves, perhaps that we haven't shown the world. So there's this like kind of like progression, do you see, from like 2023 to 2026 going on through the whole duration of Saturn in Pisces, which is very important to think about and to not rush. Okay, dragon can make us want to rush. It's a little bit mitigated by it being a wood dragon, but it's still dragon energy. It wants to go far, hard, fast, and cover that distance. But it needs to be a marathon, not a sprint. Now, again, November to January, it's very easy to rise from the ashes here. It's very easy to have these Phoenixian moments and to be like, I did it. I've covered the distance. I've accomplished something. I have instituted a different kind of way of generating energy in my life, which will have us breaking through limitations. So there's a very strong feeling of having crossed a certain threshold November through January. I did it. I've like come through the other side of something, for better or for worse, hopefully for better. And something major starts to release in that finishing energy. There is a stepping into power for a lot of people there. There's an invitation into a story that is more appropriate or more well, or less scared because of lack or scared because of a previous, perhaps poverty-based ideology. Very good year to overcome the poverty mindset, very good year to overcome any type of self-limiting belief. And at the highest level, I think that the 2024 Dragon Year cycle is wonderful for really feeling, getting the senses back in order, dopamine detox for some people, especially in that first chapter, February to April, all right? Dopamine detox, getting your senses more aligned so that you can really feel the flight taking place, so that you can really feel the movement, the mobility of your context, and so that you're not numb or desensitized to what's actually changing in your life right now. That's very important. And stepping out of the year then, like November to January, with a higher regard for your senses, with a higher regard for your physical body and physical location. As I see a lot of people coming into this year of 2024, very ungrounded and very consciously tied into like social media, the online network, the etherscape perhaps, or different dimensions, different areas, a lot of astral travel going on, a lot of inadvertent astral travel going on, and a lot of like, one of the psychic images I get is like living in a skyrise apartment, like living very high off the ground, in the clouds. Everything's working, and that's not bad. I mean, some people can actually have a lot of holiness, very sacred hermit energy for some people. For other people, it's kind of like a nightmare type of situation as they start to lose a lot of connection to any kind of like sustainable or self-generating energy, as they're kind of cut off from nature or cut off from the earth. It depends on the personality, depends on how Pluto and Aquarius aspects your chart, whether it's just awesome or nightmarish to live in these kind of like ungrounded media-based realities. But I would keep an eye on that for yourself. I would keep an eye on dopamine dependence, on reliance on the screen, on anything that is technical or technological. And I would compare that to how you feel, for example, when you're like barefoot in the woods, or when because there's something there, right? With Wood Dragon, it's like learning through nature. If you can like go to the national forest or something, okay? If I can give a little bit of a message here, any resources you want to focus into the preservation of national forests, into the continued protective regulations of forest area is very important here. Ensuring that there is a prevention of too much unneeded like drilling or unneeded environmental resource harvesting, because there's plenty of infrastructure as it is. That's a wonderful way to channel the energy of the wood dragon. That's a great way to get a bit of personal spiritual power as well, to perhaps protect nature or to protect the unneeded dissolution of nature, or the unneeded advantage taking of nature when the resources are already there as it is, when the infrastructure is already there, when it's basically greed that is creating the overdoing of these natural spaces. So yeah, there's something there with wood dragon very strong. We might have some conflicts there. We might have some political battles perhaps around, like, are we drilling in the forest? Are we wanting to like privatize certain protected lands? And I think that it's so important that we maintain protections of lands which have been designated as undisturbed or protected. So that's going to be very, very important. I imagine we'll see something along those lines, and like that sort of need for other people to feel like it could be mine, or I could like have those lands to drill on or something. Like, that's very dragonic as well. Like the possibility, the economic possibility of like all of this untouched land. So, there could be like drilling permits. There could also be a question of like Arctic lands as well. That's definitely something that I'm feeling just intuitively, as there's like new trade routes coming up in that region of the globe, or it will stand to be a more economically active area. So a lot of the conflicts that we see right now could be based somewhat in a perhaps shifting status quo relating to the designation of lands or trade routes. As, of course, Uranus in Taurus, Jupiter in Taurus, wood dragon year. This is all very evocative of that. Also, Pluto changing sign. Pluto deals with all of these types of concepts as well. And finally, taking it down to the more individual mundane, a question of density versus lightness. Okay, what we hold, what we connect to, does it weigh us down or does it give us a platform? Most important question you can ask yourself in the 2024 Wood Dragon year is what I have created, what I've gained in my life, what I've been striving for. Is this something that weighs me down, or is this something that gives me a platform to further help my family, my fellow humans, the planet? Very important to assess also how we are using what we have, or how we are standing on what we have, and how we're generating energy with it. Can it be lighter? Can it be more motivating? Can it be stronger? And most importantly, can it be more sustainable and more bountiful? Are we stuck in any kinds of loops that are limiting our capacity in this lifetime? Because those are not going to last in this year cycle, with not only it being a wood dragon year, but the other astrology transits that are happening. There's way too much new wave, adaptive energy. And I will say, with Saturn and Neptune in Pisces, Pluto in Aquarius, Jupiter heading towards Gemini, even the late Uranus in Taurus, it very much feels like, there are very poetic ways in which things happen. There are ways in which things are transmuted or transformed. There are ways in which we couldn't have expected this would be like this, and it's hard to maybe also predict the momentum of certain things at all. So we kind of have to take it as it comes, take it as it goes, and be more quick with our understanding if things are positive or negative in our life, healthy or unhealthy, and not get too stuck or too attached to the way that things have been. It's very hard to have attachments to things which are not here anymore, which is always possible with Saturn and Neptune and Pisces. And I am seeing a lot of suffering happening because of attachment to the past here. And I'm also seeing a lot of addiction and escapism because of attachment to the past, or even attachment to some type of belief that we have about who we are, but we're not seeing that reflected in real life. Can we actually create that now, instead of, using addiction or escapism to channel that in a mind-centric way instead of reality? Because Wood Dragon Year will give us the chance to really create the highest form of our own personal expression, detached from egotism, and really made real. So anyway, everyone, that sounds like a great place to conclude today. This channel is on Patreon. If you want to get weekly forecasts, monthly sign-by-sign videos, it's all available over there. Come check it out. Also hit the like button below if you enjoyed this video. Let's get it out there, and comment below and let me know how Dragon Year seems for you. Do you have any ideas, comments, predictions about what that will mean for you or for other people? I would love to hear it, and I would love to start the dialogue below. So thank you all so much. Have a wonderful, wonderful transit, and happy 2024 Wood Dragon Year. Bye.